All right. So I don't know what to say because I know so much of her story and it's fabulous. And for those of you that don't subscribe to the Pioneer Press, subscribe and read her column. It's really amazing how she's interviewed so many different people and shared their story of the legacy that they're leaving and what they're doing to really be a better person. So she's got a great eye for spotting talent. Next up, I would like to introduce our closing speaker, Roxanne Battle. And Roxanne Battle is a longtime Twin Cities journalist and author best known for her work as former co-host of KARE 11 Today Show. Her memoir, Pockets of Joy, Deciding to be Happy, Choosing to be Free, now in its second printing, and the Pockets of Joy Journal, both published in 2015, became bestsellers, hitting number 1 and 2 at the same time in their category on Amazon. All right, that's no small feat. Her book is currently a finalist for the Midwest Independent Publishing Association Book of the Year in the parenting category, and she finds out tonight. Okay, so separate categories, they can both be winners, all right? Best known for her humor and masterful storytelling, Roxanne is a gifted video producer and speaker, and frequently talks to corporate and faith-based audiences on the topic of finding joy and work-life balance. Named an architect of change, Roxanne is a featured contributor on Maria Shriver and has also been featured in Working Mother and Ebony magazines, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and the St. Paul Pioneer Press. A native of St. Paul, Roxanne graduated from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and completed her degree in journalism at the University of Missouri-Columbia. She currently lives in Minneapolis, where she enjoys cycling and walks around the lake. She has, hold on, we have to go to my last page, completed 4 consecutive Iron Girl duathlons. Ready? And she now just runs 5Ks for fun. She is a wife and mother and enjoys feeding homemade mac and cheese to her family and friends. You can find Roxanne at roxannebattle.com, but first of all, you can find her right here on the stage at TWMN.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Pam Borton and everyone and Tammy Follett for the invitation to be here. I'm just thrilled to see women empowering and putting each other up and supporting one another. It's just phenomenal. I was thinking about what I was going to say today. You know, it's always like you're the last speaker, so it's like the, last but not least. I kind of think I'm like, there's been so many themes today about empowerment and helping each other and your spiritual muse and your guidance and what's in your belly. And so I'm just going to be today's pooper scooper. Just going to wrap it all up, just kind of tie up all the loose ends of what's been said. Thank you for that fabulous introduction. The bottom line with me is this, that when the muses speak, for me, I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I listen to what the universe, what God is telling me. And when the muses speak, the bottom line for me is listen and act. And so I want to talk a little bit about my journey, my fantastical journey as an author, new author, that resulted from the fact that I listened and I acted. In 2014, I got the sign from the universe that I should become an author, that I should write my book. And for me, writing a book at that time was the equivalent of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Just wasn't going to happen. But in 2014, I got an idea that I had to write the book, so I cleared my calendar. And in January of 2015, took a month off, went down to Florida and had the rough draft, the manuscript, finished in a week. I flew back to Minneapolis and contacted my publisher, and I said, I want this book published in 4 months. She says, Roxanne, that you can't, it takes a year to 2 years to publish a book. I said, I want the book published in 4 months. She says, that's very difficult, but not impossible. And that was a sentence that changed my life, because what I said to her was, let's go to work. So I basically worked 2 jobs. I was in my office at night from 8 to midnight to 1 in the morning, rewriting and proofreading and talking to graphic designers and that kind of stuff. And on May 15th, 2015, 5:15 at 5:15 in the afternoon, at 5:15 Jersey Avenue South, I launched my book, which also happens to be my birthday. And so the fantastical journey begins. And when becoming an author, I've met so many amazing people. The only way I can describe it is fantastical. And one of those amazing people was Karen Sullivan. I read her book, she read my book. We met at a fundraiser for the Smile Network. And then Karen decided, she says, I'd like to tell your story. She wrote an article for me about me in the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And in that article, she asked me, how did you transition from being a television news anchor, reporter, talk show host to not being one? What was that transition like? And in a word, it was devastating because I lost my entire identity. Everything that I had been for my entire adult life didn't exist anymore. But I told Karen in that interview that there was a book by Maria Shriver called Just Who Will You Be, where she wrote about how she lost her identity as an NBC News correspondent when her then husband became governor of the state of California, and the journey that she went on to find her way back. Well, that book was a beacon for me. It stayed on my nightstand for years. And I told Karen that story, and she printed it. Maria Shriver's people called me and asked me for my life story. And I gave it to them in 800 words or less. They did a story on the book, Pockets of Joy, Deciding to Be Happy to Be Free, and then they also mentioned the journal. And they ran that story just a few days before Christmas. The book and the journal went to 1 and 2 on Amazon in the parenting category. I beat myself. My competition was myself. Sales went across the country, and I am now an architect of change for mariashriver.com. Fantastical. The muses spoke, I listened and obeyed, and this journey began. I have another story I want to tell. I was on a plane going to California. I had made my mind that I was going to go see a girlfriend who had endorsed the book. I was going to go support her, much like we're doing here today. I was just going to go sit in the audience and support her at her conference in LA. And I wasn't going to go, but 3 weeks before the conference, I changed my mind, and I went to the administrative assistant, and I said, would you book me a flight to LA? I'm going to go to LA and support my friend in this conference. The day came for me to take the flight. And I get on the plane, and I was by the window. It was a 2-seater. I was by the window, and there was a gentleman sitting on the aisle. But there was also somebody sitting in my window seat. So excuse me, I think I'm in that seat. So the gentleman who was sitting in the aisle, very well-groomed African-American gentleman, hopped up. The guy that was in my seat got up, moved to his correct seat, and I scooted in and sat down. And then the gentleman who had been there put my bag up in the bin, and he sat down next to me. And I looked at him. And I realized I was sitting next to Tavis Smiley of PBS, BET, published 16 books on the New York Times bestseller list for 3 hours, and he can't go anywhere. So I said to myself, this is a moment. This is a moment. What do you want to come out of this, Roxanne? Because he's there. And we're going to be in the sky, and he's not going anywhere. What do you want to come out of this? And I thought to myself, if I could just get my book in his hands. If I could just get my book in his hands, that would be great. So the flight attendants we're getting ready to flight, and they're batting down the hatches and making sure the tray tables are up in their upright position. And Tavis is sitting next to me, and he's devouring the Star Tribune. He's just every article, he's engrossed in the paper. So I take out my cell phone, and I Google him, sitting right next to him. And I find out, yes, he's written like 16 books, and he's written the newest book at the time that he had written was Maya and Me. He had a 26-year relationship with the late Maya Angelou. She was a mentor and mother figure for him. And that book had just come out, and she had just passed away. So I Googled him, I put the phone away, we're airborne. And I go in, but before we were airborne, I just wanted to see if he was nice. So I put the phone away, and I say, hello, Mr. Smiley. He said, hi, how are you? Good to see you. Hi, how are you? I said, okay, so he's friendly, okay. So I said, I'm going to go in one more time. So I waited a few more minutes just to make sure. I said, so what brings you to Minneapolis? Oh, I was speaking at the Teamsters Union, something down the church, Minneapolis, and blah, 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 blah. I said, oh, so he's chatty. He's nice and he's chatty. I'm going for it. So I wait till we're airborne. We're 35,000 feet in the air. He can't go anywhere. And I turn to him and I say, so did it take you long to, was it challenging to put that book together so quickly after Maya's passing? An hour conversation on Maya and me, just chatting it up, talking about the trips to Africa, talking about their conversations, talking about the dinners they had together. It was fantastical. I had one of the most articulate rock star, debater, commentator guys sitting next to me telling me his life story, and I was out of my head. And part of the conversation, he says, one of the greatest debates he and Maya had was, what is the greater virtue? Which is the greater virtue? Love or courage? He says, Roxanne, Maya and I would go round and round and round about which is the greatest virtue, love or courage? So, Roxanne, what do you think? Which is the greater virtue, love or courage? Here is Tavis Smiley, Times Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in 2009, asking me what I think. And I can't go anywhere. But I knew exactly what the answer to that question was without hesitation. And I said to him, Tavis, in my mind, it takes courage to love. And you can't have love without courage. So courage is the greater virtue. He looks to me and says, that is exactly what Maya said. I can show it to you in the book. So now I'm in. I'm his girl. We're on the first name basis. We're eating brownie chips on the plane. It's just a great plane ride. And we're talking some more. And then finally he says to me, so Roxanne, what do you do? I hand him the book, tell him I'm a new author, and he looks at the book and he says, pockets of joy, deciding to be happy, choosing to be free. I like that, because in my mind, I always tell people there's two kinds of people in life, people who are running scared or people who are running free. So now he likes the book, he likes me, time to go for the ask. I said, Tavis, this is kind of kismet, right? I mean, you believe in divine fate, and you seem to be a man of faith, so you realize that nothing is coincidental. He says, yep. And I know people ask you for things all the time, yep. And so you're thinking probably what I'm going to ask. He says, yep. And I said, I'm going to ask you, and you can say no, but I'm going to ask, but I got to ask because this is a moment. He says, okay. I said, I want you to endorse my book. He says, if I do that, you'll blow up. And I said, why do you think I'm asking you? He looks at the book and he says, happy to do it. I gave him my phone. He put his email and his phone number in my phone. I reciprocated, and he emailed me the endorsement. 2 days later, the second printing of the book just came back from the printer last week, and it's in the back of the room with Tavis Smiley's endorsement on it. What is the moral of that story? Besides, when the muses speak, act, and act quickly and obediently. The moral of that story is I really wanted to be an author. My desire to be an author, to me, mattered. It mattered enough for me to muster up the moxie to ask a superstar for an endorsement and get it. And so what I say to you is, what are your dreams? What do you think about? What's that rumbling in your belly? Is it your LLC? Is it your book project? Is it your art gallery? Is it your company? It matters. Your dreams matter. You matter. Your opinion matters. Bust your tail, work really hard, and ask for what you want. And you just might get it. And if you think I'm making this up, take a look at the screen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.